Okay, I think we're live now, and I want to welcome everybody to our session on preparing for the new normal, transformation from automated to autonomous. We have some good speakers and presenters today that understand this topic very well, and we're looking forward to having the audience participation at the end when we go into the panel discussion. So please use the Q&A as your way to enter questions when we enter the panel discussion stage. Actually, anytime that you think of a question, please put it in the Q&A. Okay, with that, let's get going with the first presentation. Hi, welcome to our session on preparing for the new normal, the transformation from automated to autonomous. I'm Dick Hill. Let's begin with industry business challenges and trends. Now, all of you are familiar with the global competition and the increasing pressures to lower the costs, to meet the goals of the customers. Sometimes their standards change, and at the same time, there are constant pressures for energy costs. And of course, there's the aging assets, both human and physical equipment. And at utmost importance is the plant and personnel safety. These pressures are constant, and you have to address these all the time. Then along comes COVID-19 that added more challenges and more uncertainty. But the objective remains to improve your business performance and to meet the challenges over the operations life cycle. And you must do this safely. Let's look at the operational technology trends. As we say, transformation from automated to autonomous. And I'm showing a picture in the upper left-hand corner of what I'm calling an aging system. And there are many ramifications of this aging system, but they all began back in the mid-1900s. And some characteristics of them from a model point of view is a lot of the operations was manual, totally manual. Humans had to make all the decisions, turn on, turn off, move things up or down. And there was some regulatory control, but these systems were needed to be rapidly replaced, and they have been, to where we are today with what I'm referring to as modern systems. And these follow modern business models. They also use modern technologies and work processes that are characterized by the 21st century. And the maturity level for these are typically level 2, which is regulatory control, all the way up to advanced regulatory, such as advanced process control, and level 4, which we call select autonomy. That means some operations or some parts of the operation could actually be run without human intervention. Now, to reach full autonomy, we call that model maturity level 5. This is where humans are really not necessary to be part of the process. So that's the definition of our technology models for automated to autonomous. Now, last forum, we introduced this 5-level model, and it showed all these different levels, starting with, as I said, no autonomy or manual, to the full autonomy of level 5, where humans really did not need to have any involvement, and they could be removed to a remote operation if necessary. We also did a survey back beginning early last year, and we asked the respondents to say, where do you think you are on a variety of things within the operations? And as you can see on the left-hand chart, when it came to the best operations, best production, they pretty well thought that level 3 or advanced regulatory was pretty much where they were, and very little influence thought that they were at level 5. Moving to the next question, which was where did they think they'd be in 2 years, which of course was 2022. And you can see some movement towards autonomy, but no one really thought that we'd be at the autonomous level across the board at that point. So we still have some room to move and improvements to make. So the keys to success are to continue along the digital transformation, and it is required to optimize plant performance. We need to have technology, the experiences, and the process working uniformly together. We need to enable investment opportunities based on the best return on assets. We need to follow a solid life cycle process. Develop, engineer, construct, start up, and then repeat this logical operation as you move through your operations. And teamwork is essential, making sure that all parties are on board and moving in the same direction. You need to set predefined goals and objectives. You need to use technologies to renew the standards, to remove performance gaps and solve the very tough problems. You need to reach for autonomous operations where needed and where it makes sense. Autonomous operations needs intelligent digital transformation. Again, thank you for being part of this session, and please enjoy the next presentations and stay to the end and help us with the panel discussion. Start thinking about your questions you want to ask the panel, which can be submitted via the chat function. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Howard Elton, and I'm the Process Control and Automation Leader for Koch Ag and Energy, the ammonia fertilizer division of the Koch companies. Today I'll be sharing with you a story of our journey to the plant of the future and how we're using digital transformation to help us get there. For this presentation, I'll start with our vision and how we chose to think about not only the plant of the future, but also our roadmap, how we wanted to get there. Next, I'll discuss the economic drivers that compelled Koch to begin this journey. I'll also share a picture of how we see people's roles changing in our organization so that the organization is ready for the plant of the future. We'll follow that with a detailed look at our focus areas for 2019, and I'll wrap things up with a look at the new focus areas we added in 2020 and the outcomes we've achieved to date. In May of 2018, the Koch Ag and Energy leadership teams began working on a roadmap that would lead us to the plant of the future. It's a 3 to 5 year plan, and you can see the first 3 years on this slide as foundation, transition, transform. Above that, we chose the symbol of improved process control as our emblem for success, because we recognized that process control would play a key role in transforming our operations. We knew the role of the operators would change and that the role of process control would change and become far more important. In summary, our journey to the plant of the future is about leveraging automation to become fully optimized in terms of safety, capacity, and costs. It means being fully connected. Real-time plant information is available 24/7, everywhere and for all stakeholders. And it means being fully integrated, all data systems working seamlessly together to achieve this optimum state. The overall vision for how we wanted to accomplish our transformation journey included rapid adoption of tools and methods, leading to increased production and decreased risk, and an improvement to the sense of fulfillment experienced by our employees. And this speaks to the need to understand how roles change in the future. Another area of thought leadership is around value drivers, thinking through the most important problems or the greatest areas of discomfort that would benefit from transformation. For Koch Ag and Energy, it was in several areas that are typical for chemical manufacturers or refiners. First and foremost, it's around safety, process safety and functional safety, along with the OSHA mechanical integrity requirements that also drive reliability. Also important to us were run rates and capacities for our existing process technologies, our uptimes, our stream factors. We also wanted to improve how we manage turnarounds and how we emerge from turnarounds, knowing that there are several complex factors to this. We also had some operating cost issues to address, including how we move product from our gates out to the fields where farmers are planting. I'll talk more in detail about these when I give the 2020 updates. For some companies, these value drivers may mean the dark plant or the fully autonomous operation. But for most of us, it's not yet that futuristic. For most, there will be a few incremental improvements along with a few step change improvements from the new technologies that digital transformation brings. Once you've decided on the direction and these broad goals, choosing those technologies, the how to get there, that's the fun part. All of this should be the basis for your thought leadership around digital transformation. And with clarity around the problems you want to solve, the decisions then for what's most meaningful and most achievable for your business, your markets, and your process technologies will emerge. Expect some bumps and bruises. Be ready for some small scale experiments in the most risky areas. And I recommend you only include a few of those at a time. Many companies will just need to apply the tried and true technologies that already are common in that industry, but may be new to that specific company. And there were several of these for Koch Ag and Energy. What does Koch Ag and Energy think the future will look like for its operating units? To us, operators will become production analysts, supporting optimization instead of responding to alarms or unplanned events. They will be focused on how their automation is performing. They'll be focused on solving automation performance problems and shortcomings. They'll be looking ahead and using data to improve equipment performance. This is an organizational transformation that might create some fear. And this is an important area of thought leadership for digital transformation. High-level leaders must be very clear that digital transformation is not about headcount reduction, but it's about personal and professional transformation as well. Taking the whole organization to a higher level, learning and growing new skills and capabilities at all levels. In other words, everyone gets some new aspects to their jobs. Yet even this may not be comfortable for some people. And here's where leaders need to be sensitive to individual needs, bringing reassurance to those who struggle with change so that they too believe they have some place they'll fit and they'll still have a role. By doing that, leaders are able to keep the negative down to a minimum and keep their organization moving ahead on their journey to digital transformation. At Koch Ag and Energy, we also had a vision for the engineering side, for process and process control teams. APC, for example, is an aspect of the transformation that is new to Koch Ag and Energy, but not necessarily new to industry and not even new to Koch in general. Our sister companies, Flint Hills Resources and others inside of Koch, have had APC for a number of years. But for the ammonia business, process controls are quickly becoming the tools that we use to drive digital transformation for people and for systems. DCS, APC, smart instruments, and longer term, looking ahead to fully automated startups and shutdowns through state-based control, which then will move Koch Ag and Energy closer to autonomous operations. These tools remove human intervention. They help spot trends and prevent failures. they capture and apply the best process knowledge, and best of all, they limit exposure risk to our people in the field. Here's a little bit more detailed look at the focus areas in our roadmap. 2019 was a year of building foundation for digital transformation, and that included installing best-in-class turbo machinery protection systems on our large rotating machines. It included making progress on instrumentation asset health monitoring, optimizing production by putting process control metrics in place and by experimenting with APC. It included getting IT/OT infrastructure in place, along with newer, more up-to-date software applications and relational databases instead of the more typical flat files and paper work processes. And this enabled significant improvement in our work processes, eliminating mundane and wasteful work and enabling higher value activity and reducing risk of human errors. This also helped us maximize the use of operational data. The last piece for 2019 is about sustainability, institutionalizing these new technologies and their associated new work processes. You can see the technology platforms that we chose for each component of this transformation. These are listed to the right in the white area. Emerson Machine Health Monitoring was one that we used, although there are several good products out there. We're applying Yokogawa's PRM and Emerson's AMS. Both of these play a key role for us, along with ValveLink, Smart Plant Instrumentation, and Maximo for our computerized maintenance management system. We then layered on Honeywell's CPM product to help us measure and improve the performance of our PID controllers. We're also using AspenTech DMC3 for our APC technology. ZoloScan is listed here. This is a Koch technology for combustion measurement and control. You also see IT/OT tools listed here. These are providing us the in-field connectivity to digital transformation applications, such as DataSplice, GoCanvas, and to Maximo, our maintenance management system. Additionally, in 2019, we wanted to use digital methods to take the guesswork out of our most common work processes, such as training, management of change, and again, the process safety and functional safety handoffs, and those lifecycle activities. Also, management of engineering standards and practices. So we've migrated to better digital tools here for these applications, including Enablon and Excellentia. One other piece of the foundation was finding better ways to make all of this data flow. Process data, asset data, project data, administrative data. And you see those tools listed there as the business and the DCS wireless tools. For 2020, we've added a focus area around environmental stewardship. And I want to be clear that this is not a regulatory issue for us, but it's only an optimization goal for Koch Ag and Energy. We also added a focus on improving how our plants transition from run state to idle state during unexpected events. Finally, we also added some capacity expansion goals, particularly around our upgrade products like urea and UAN. In the end, what have we accomplished? How has digital transformation for Koch Ag and Energy become a reality? Well, 2020 is on track to deliver a strong transition, including one APC model having been in place for a year, and we're going to deliver 5 more in the first quarter of 2021. We have several of our plants operating at 90% of process control loops operating in their highest state. We've deployed protective controls on all our turbo machinery, and now we're moving to the best-in-class regulatory controls for these machines as well. Our mechanical integrity program is in place and functioning. Paperwork processes there have been eliminated and are being replaced by digital work processes using tablets in the field on our pervasive wireless network. in our tank farm and loading operations, truck drivers now have their DOT paperwork, bills of lading, commercial paperwork, all on their cell phones. They can request and schedule a pickup time by phone. They're tracked real time as they approach the delivery site, and they have a full picture of their weight and loadout times. The truck load in and load out is also automatic through the web apps on the cell phone, and this has eliminated huge lines of trucks outside our plants during the major planting seasons. We have a process analytics tool called Asset 360, and we're building out our Pi Asset framework for these process analytics, and we've done similar things for our instrumentation assets. We've adopted a single digital tool for all our process safety and functional safety lifecycle activities, thus eliminating a huge risk of human error, as previously data was transferred manually from one tool to another. In the same way, our MOC process is completely digital and includes access to operations, maintenance, and engineering documentation. This digitalization is undergirded by 2 wireless networks at each of our plant sites. 2021 promises to be another banner year regarding digital transformation. We have a solid vision for state-based control, and we're applying some exciting new technologies to achieve our goals in this area. We're experimenting with many types of wireless devices, most of which go straight up into our Pi and business networks for monitoring, but many of which come into our DCS network so board operators can see them. We're experimenting with drones in several applications, including solids inventory management, flare performance, and equipment monitoring. We're continuing our APC journey, and we're also exploring the newer tools like deep learning process control. So to sum up, the digital transformation journey can be real, it can deliver tangible outcomes, and it can truly make work and life easier and more straightforward. And it can also work across all areas of your company, from product sales and delivery to manufacturing through engineering and projects. Today in this presentation, I have focused on what Koch Ag and Energy has done in 2 years, in 2019 and 2020. For you, keep in mind that there are many voices in the marketplace attempting to drive digital transformation and touting many new shiny objects. So be curious, but also do your homework. Digital transformation truly is a journey that requires a deep focus on the readiness aspects first: data, infrastructure, people, and how data is consumed. This is the foundation that I've been speaking of. This is what delivers robust situational awareness. And then, with situational awareness in place, the transition into strong decision support and increasingly autonomous operation is possible. And with that, I'll bring my presentation to a close and open it up to the audience for questions.
Okay, thank you, Howard. That was excellent. I see some questions are starting to come in, and we will get to those in a moment. First, I would like to introduce the other members of our session here, and in particular, I want to get to asking a few of my questions directly to Apostolos. So let me start with, first of all, Apostolos Georgiou, who recently retired from ExxonMobil after a long career. He was, I'll try to get your title correctly. Your last title was Senior Engineering Advisor and Program Leader for Data Analytics, Machine Learning, and Autonomous Operations for Process Control. Is that close enough?
Yeah, close enough.
All right. Anyway, what it basically says is Apostolos has a lot of knowledge in this area, and I want to take full advantage of that in a moment. We also have joining us 2 other distinguished individuals. So we have Eugene Spyropoulos, who's automation and control information management expert at Yokogawa. Welcome, Eugene. And last but not least, we have Kevin Starr, who's a North American Service Business Manager for Process Industries for ABB US. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So to begin with, I'd like to, I have a few very targeted discussion points I want to talk to Apostolos about, having just come from ExxonMobil. And I believe you have indicated in the past that petrochemical process industries operate in an automotive equivalent of cruise control. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that?
Yes, thanks, Dick. Just to make a statement here, obviously I represent myself in this meeting, so any comments and opinions represent me and not ExxonMobil, just to make this. I retired 10 days ago, just to make sure that we'll understand that. Yeah, last year, obviously, I presented a paper about how to move from automated to autonomous operations. And I mentioned, and many other comments also mentioned, there are a lot of parallels between the autonomous operations and the technologies applied for self-driving cars or autonomous cars. By the way, the concepts and the vision of autonomous operations are coming from the self-driving cars and so on. So I just wanted to compare the different technologies we use in the different industries. Basically, right now, for the past 30 plus years, there was a lot of progress in the automation. Currently, a well-advanced plan, industrial plan, if it's under normal conditions, semi-steady state conditions, few disturbances, that plan can work automatically or autonomously without human intervention. So basically, if you visit the control room during the night shift, you will realize that the operator turns on the multivariable predictive control. The unit is moving smoothly to the constraints, and it's over there. And you will see that operators have a lot of relaxing time. This is exactly what we do when we travel in a highway and we use our cruise control so we can relax. It's exactly the same concept. And we can see that usually during the night shifts. So that's where our industry is. The idea is we need to move forward to more adaptive time cruise control, to more self-learning technologies, to more self-optimizing technologies.
Well, thank you. The survey I did last year certainly proves or validates what you just said. Also, I wanted to ask you, the COVID-19 world pandemic has forced many companies to make changes in how they operate. And of course, Howard has talked about some of these in his presentation. But I'm wondering what technology transitions do you feel are likely to be adopted due to this COVID-19, Apostolos?
Okay, let's understand. COVID-19 does not affect the distillation column, does not affect the equipment, does not affect the data or the internet. It affects people, it affects the behavior of the people, and mainly affects the assistance you get from the people. So to answer your question, besides the typical evolution of the automation technologies, the automation technologies will become better, you will have more data, faster internet and so on. That's a typical evolution of the technology. However, the step change in the business value, it will come from technologies that mimic the functioning of the human brain and helps to enhance human decision making. Basically, what I say, the cognitive AI technologies will really bring the additional business value. That's the technologies that really simulate human behavior, simulate the decision making of the humans. And that's really, if you see the outside industry, the industry like Facebook or Google and so on make so much money because they manage really to use these technologies to bring more value. So that's the step change in the business value proposition in the future. And obviously automation is the foundation in order really to become more autonomous, right? So we'll understand that.
Okay. All right, Apostolos, I have a couple more questions for you, but maybe I should bring Kevin and Eugene into the Q&A a little bit too. So I'll come back to you. Hold on.
No problem.
So, let me start with actually it's a question that I think I'd like to ask Eugene to start with, and so the question I had noted down here was, what would you like to see that is not currently available to make the journey to the plant of the future more possible?
What would I like to see? That's an interesting question.
A tough one.
It's a tough one.
Because I know as a supplier, you have lots of good technology that you're bringing out, and maybe you could just make a comment.
Well, I think a lot of it will have to do with people. I think with regard to a commitment and an open-mindedness of people to be able to carry that forward. I think the technology is going to progress, and the cat is out of the bag, really, regarding where the technology is going. And how the technology is adopted, what I would like to see for, looking at speed and security of adoption would sort of be the commitment of people to making it happen, both on the executive level for end user companies, process manufacturers, but also on the operational level as well, with the adoption of the people who operate and who operate these plants and facilities. So I think it's a commitment thing.
Okay. Kevin, you want to take a shot at that one too?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, what's a vision? If you looked out the window, it's, I think seamless interconnections of information, but I think data that results in actions that can be realizable. There's so many dashboards right now and so many dots on screens and so many bells and whistles that people kind of get overloaded. And I try to bring it back down to, can you actually do something with this? I've been so many places where there's data lakes and there's information going into there, but they don't have the right information, but the next generation doesn't know that because all they know is what data in a spreadsheet looks like or an object-oriented. They don't even know, they've lost a little bit of the touch. Now, having said that, there's a P in digital. I'm a strong believer in that, but I don't believe that that person has to be in harm's way. We should not have anyone afraid to go to work and not come back home ever. In today's world, so linking solutions and information and pulling that together so that we can convert it into actions that are directly linked to production, quality, and cost to produce safely. I guess that's my dream, and I think we're real close. And that's kind of, I really liked Howard's talk and how you kind of break the problem down, start where you're at, and then grow. But there's a lot of noise. I was at ARC 6 years ago when you were talking about the Wild West of digital's coming. And you guys nailed it. It has been, but it's been quite a journey.
Well, I wish we would have been able to prove it a different way than COVID-19, but
COVID didn't cause the Industrial Revolution, but it sped it up. I mean, it literally it certainly did that. We had to come up with ideas that we thought might be available in a few years to let's go. And so our customers, it changed the dialogue that we're able to have with our clients in an exciting way. I mean, I'm a big PID loop tuning guy, and I, there was a time is you can't do a bump test unless you're right there in front of it. I'm now having customers say, can you do that stuff remotely? Can we? So we're like, so the transition to autonomous is in steps. And part of it is to be able to rethink. There's no walls in digital. And I don't mean to take the time. There's no walls in digital. And we have to reevaluate what we do, what our practice is, and how can we integrate digital solutions to expedite that. Right person, right time, right solution, right value.
Right. Yeah, well, let me go back to Apostles for a second. I want Howard to think about this question a little bit too. Is in the past, Apostles has talked about there's a lot of unplanned events and a lot of disturbances that you have to predict. Do you think advances towards autonomous operations can help us in those ability to predict when these unplanned events are going to happen?
Um, yeah, I think so. I mean, the advances in autonomous operations obviously will generate a lot of new value, and obviously it will help the sites or the operations to do much better. Let me elaborate a little bit better. There are planned events or the instrument failures will be there regardless what you do, regardless how good equipment you have and so on. The question is, what do you do with these unplanned events? And this is really the main driving force to go to the autonomous operations. Is really to take care of unplanned events in a better way than we're doing today. If I have 2 minutes, I can give you a very simple example from the auto industry and then extrapolate that to the process industry. Take, for example, the cognitive GPS that you have in your iPhone, okay? And compare your iPhone or smart GPS, whatever you call it, with the first version of GPS or with MapQuest or Google Maps and so on. You will see a big difference. Right now, the cognitive GPS talks to you like a human. Not only that, it tells you the accident. Not only that, it brings the context of the accident to you. It will tell you if it affects your travel path, how long will it take, and so on. And more important, is proactive, is giving you alternatives to follow. This is what the cognitive technology is. Imagine right now if you have a similar technology at the sites, at the operating plants, that really detect a traffic jam, which is an accident, and automatically contextualizes the information and brings that information to the operator. This is a huge value trying to address that. That's what I mean. This is really the cognitive kind of technologies, because the smart GPS really contextualizes the data and brings it to you. Okay, we want similar technologies in the process industry, and that has a lot of value. By the way, the examples that yesterday Nick Closey from ExxonMobil presented in the morning session, he referred to technologies called Smart Lane. I also presented that last year. Is exactly the same way. It's a cognitive GPS for polymer startups in order really to prevent or propose alternatives to the operator if there are the unplanned events during startup. So those are technologies that really are going to dominate in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's the technologies that will bring additional business value on top of the value from automation technologies.
Well, thank you, Apostles. Howard, what's your thoughts on the technologies for unplanned events?
Well, Apostolos is onto something there, and what we are doing and what we see happening in Koch Ag and Energy is we're developing dashboards, as Kevin referred to, that can show our process and our operations teams long-term trends in equipment performance and process performance. And we have teams around those data trying to bring context and the conditions in a process that lead to an unplanned event are known. So watching the process approach those conditions can be known, and the people then can bring that to the attention of the board operators. Now, to Apostolos' point, this is still manual. You know, it's people and groups of individuals in the control room. Perhaps it would be nice to have Siri know this for us and communicate to the board operator what's coming down the road. But right now, it's people who do that.
Excellent.
I jump in. I mean, I just a little bit there is that I don't
Go
know,
ahead.
you mentioned machine learning earlier, and that's exactly what this is all about. Is that's the next to me, the next generation, which is real close to being here, is the ability. We can't. There's going to be unplanned things, and it would be foolish to think we'll have them all fixed. But it's how we react to them and mitigate them the next time. And that's what machine learning and the beauty of it is the training of the model based on an event and the information to be able to look for those trajectories to project, hey, you're going to have a failure. That's exciting stuff. But that don't forget false positives. I don't know anybody's chased false things and look for problems that aren't there. We don't have time for that. And that's the kiss of death of digital transformation, is reacting to information that's not true. So and just sort of attach a little bit of reality in there, is that there's a lot of great stuff coming, but you have to mitigate the risk of false positives.
Yeah, or the old shower of information, you know, where one of them is right, but you've got 27 things to look at. That's not good. I see Eugene shaking his head. Do you have any comments?
No, I was going to agree completely with everything everyone has said, and I was going to, agree also with what Kevin said a little bit earlier on about interconnectivity of devices as being a very important step. I think it does go hand in hand with kind of the people conversation as well, because with interconnectivity of systems and devices, you've got interconnectivity of subject matter expertise, and there's a real big amount of value that you get with that kind of integrated context. So I totally agree with what everybody's saying so far, and I think it's really, really spot on.
I totally agree. I think this whole movement of digitalization, it's bringing the connectivity there. And I want to go back to Apostolos quickly. In the past, Apostolos has drawn a differentiation between integrated applications and orchestrated information. Maybe you could explain a little bit about what you meant by that, Apostolos.
Well, you opened an interesting discussion and topic. There is a big difference between integration of technologies and orchestration of technologies. I'll try to spend a couple of minutes to explain, but I will start with the comments that Kevin did a couple of minutes ago about dashboards. Right, that really we are in a position that we're getting to paralysis by analysis by having so many dashboards. That's really what Kevin. And the issue of that, or at least my opinion, is that the dashboards do not provide the context of the information of the data. Okay, so basically the contextualization and then the orchestration of the technologies are is the foundation of the cognitive technologies. Let me elaborate with, I don't know if people understand what the contextualization of data is and how they use it and so on. Let me spend just a couple of minutes to give you a very, very simple example. Take for example, the condenser, a distillation condenser, when you have a refrigerant and you want really to condense the material over there. So if you tell me that the outlet of the refrigerant is about 100 degrees C, that's what you see on the dashboard, it will have no meaning to me unless I'm an expert about that equipment. However, if at the same time you tell me that the flow valve is wide open or half open, then I can contextualize the information. And what is the context of the information? That really I have a cooling capacity or I'm in the constraint of the cooling. So in that case, this is the context of that information. So if I have the context of the information, then I know what to do. I can open the fin fan, I can do things, all right? That's what is a contextualization of the information. So basically, we need really to not transfer only the absolute values of the data, but the context of that information. And I can say the business value of the context of the information is much, much more than the values, the absolute values of the data. So that's the contextualization. Then when we start moving data and context from application to application, then we have the orchestration. If we move just data, then we have the integration of the applications. And I give you one more example. If you use an RTO system or a similar supervisor system to optimize the unit, and then you have the multivariable control to implement the results. So what you have to do is to really to send the active constraint set to the multivariable control and not the set points. Once you do that, then the multivariable control and the RTO will be orchestrated and not integrated. I hope I explain what is the difference between integration and orchestration.
Okay, everybody comfortable? I like what your point of view is there. I have a question from the audience that I think it's for Howard, but I think maybe a couple of you folks could also chime in. So Howard, this question is, how has Koch organization accepted the future role changes? How have you been able to get support of the people? What strategies did you use to sell this to the people? In other words, this transformation as we move closer to autonomous control, I think some people tend to get threatened by that. And of course, everybody's a little fearful of change, particularly if it's going to affect you. So how have you been dealing with that with your people?
True. Yes, people are a big, big part of the overall journey. And for the most part, our board operators and others have been very accepting of the journey. We've had to circle back around with some folks to re-emphasize that this is not about losing people's jobs, it's about upskilling. I think the biggest impact we've had there is when the board operators see the benefit that improved process control, advanced process control, additional information coming in from their process, and the support they get by the control and process teams around them. That's brought them a large reassurance that that this is about them transforming their roles as well. We've had to, again, like circle back and have a few extra touch points for people who are the most concerned. And that's really important. People need to know that you care about them and the organization, and that you are looking at their future as well as the company's future.
I can echo that. With the company that I represent, there's so many people, but part of what we've been talking about as the technology is exploding, one person can't know everything. And so the quality of life, we've been seeing people that were, they were the experts, that send them into the fire and they go to fix a tuning problem and it's a power supply problem. And they're like, and so it's causing stress when that phone goes off. And so the quality of life of our people, we have to use technology and this transformation to get to line up the pieces. We have a globe of experts, but if we could link those to the problem, then the quality of life, and then we grow again. So we've instituted a service connection platform, a connected engineer program, plug in, stay safe. This idea that you're a guy with a bag, I was one of them, a smart guy with a bag of tricks. I only saw places that were on fire. That's kind of gone. The hero that runs in, fixes, and goes off in the sunset. You may get it right 1 out of 50 times. We have to improve that hit rate. And people are part of the equation, but we have to quit thinking that one person can know everything. If you hire a loop guy, you can't hire a cyber guy. If you hire a cyber guy, you don't have OT. So you don't have infinite resources to have one person on every technology stack. So how do you have a connected engineer that plugs in and can actually know? I call it Project Iron Man. If you plug into digital, you actually automatically have all this access to information. That's part of the transformation. The wearables, the I see what you see, all that stuff is part of the journey. And we're getting people to champion that. And when they champion it, it sort of creates a pull, and then it happens.
I really like the direction of the conversation. took. Not to put a plug, I earlier on in I did a presentation and I mentioned sort of the 6 wise men and the digital twin. So it's all about the context. You've got 6 wise consultants and they know everything about their space. They know exactly what a tusk is. They know exactly what an ear is. But putting it all together with the context is how it becomes an elephant. And they're right within their space. But the real value, like Apostolo said, is the context is actually, the integrated context is actually more valuable than the individual pieces themselves. And I think, as technology companies, myself and Kevin, this is where we can, potentially add value, to this sort of situation, because we can help build out that digital context so that people stay on the same page. That's something that the company I work for, of course, is very, very committed to doing, particularly in our, the technologies that we've been putting out. And so bringing these different disciplines so that you get the full elephant and not just the various pieces, I think that's where we facilitate quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, the subject matter expertise, the people, and how well they work together. And we can facilitate it, but there should be a commitment from a company to making sure that that happens. So I think, what Howard said in his presentation was very powerful, because one of the things he mentioned was reviewing, I think it was, or improving the way the employees get their job satisfaction, or improving how they feel about executing their jobs. And that's a very big factor in tying people together with one common objective. I really just love the direction of the conversation.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I just looking at some of the questions from the audience. This thread continues. There's a question about the experienced operator and how do you make sure you capture the knowledge. And I think this all relates to that. Anybody want to make any comments about the capturing the knowledge of experience with the technologies that we're exploring here?
Where we see that happening most is in 2 areas. One is how we've brought the operations team to the table to help us develop operator training simulators or digital twins. The operations team is most comfortable when they have a large seat at the table and their voice is being heard. So bringing their knowledge to bear on the development of a training simulator or a digital twin has been helpful. The other area is around APC and state-based control. When the operations team has a tremendous amount of input to how that process should be operated, where the constraints are, where the set points should be for the model, what should be in the model. And then the most important one is around state-based control. The operators know best how the units come up and go offline. So having them at the table to develop that understanding and helping them realize that they themselves are developing the technology and then reflecting that in the tools we hand them, that's been a big player for us. Having them at the table, having them develop the technology with us.
If I introduce, if I say something, first of all, you have to find out what knowledge you want to collect, okay? You don't want to collect the wrong knowledge or the wrong behavior or the wrong startup as a way of matter of fact, right? First of all, you have to find out which is your best operator, all right? The best behavior and what you do. Second, you have to figure out which part of the knowledge you want to collect. Basically, you want to collect a high cognitive load kind of experience, startups, shutdowns, this kind of things, because as we said, automation can do a much better job than an operator during normal conditions, okay? So collecting that information is really not very valuable. So you have really to understand what is happening and so on. And then maybe you put a self-learning system right now in the DCS or in the console operator and start collecting that information in a much better way than we used to do by work practices, checklists, papers, and so on. Right? Simple example. My Google knows what I do in the morning and what is my best behavior, and how I travel to work in the morning. So they collected the information and my behavior right now. We can do that in the plans for the operators too.
This is something that I think it's something that's a little bit close because it is part of our consulting activities with what we do with our customers, and it is a technology that we sort of provide that's actually quite helpful. Because as Apostolos mentioned, you need to know what behavior you want to capture, and so you kind of need two things. One of them is a platform to capture that behavior, and the second thing is a way to arbitrate what is good behavior and what is bad behavior. And that's where technology comes in, because we can see what has been done, we can capture that, we can use artificial intelligence to generate from what different operators have done for a particular activity, what generates the most alarms, what was done faster, how you tie quality to that behavior. And that way you can sort of arbitrate what the best operator behavior is. And now you can capture that and use that to automate a process with continuous improvement. And that's a really good example of kind of people working together and using technology latest technologies to capture, arbitrate, and improve continuously as a cycle, because you wouldn't get all that done in one pass. It has to be something that becomes a program, so that we keep reviewing what we have selected as the best operations. And it's a great example of technology facilitating that sort of digital transformation.
I think I agree with what everyone's saying, but my experience has also shown me that sometimes the tribal knowledge, kind of going to what Apostolos was saying, is if maybe you grew up in this facility and that's the best you've ever seen it, but that's what the facility, for somebody that works in the industry that may see 1,000 of these, we actually have references, say, well, this is best in class and you're here and here's a gap. So it's the ability to measure a performance gap that has a tangible, realizable performance rating based on some criteria. That's why like alarm management has ISA or EMUA standards, cybersecurity has industrial standards. There are standards that you can measure against. I've been to places where they would say, this machine just runs that way, Kevin. You can't expect to change it. And I'm like, well, can I come in tonight and play? And they're like, yeah. And then they said, what'd you do? And they'd never seen it operate like that before, because they didn't have it in their mental image that it could ever operate that way. So that's the only thing I'm saying. Just be a little bit careful basing your expertise on your expertise. Sometimes bringing people in, say, how do we align based on best practices? And sometimes those are hard pills to take because people don't like to hear that, well, I thought I was best, and so that's a difficult discussion, but you have to be careful and say, let's actually work together to implement a solution and let's measure the results. So one of the things that we do is, I don't know if you've heard of the golden batch or, this is the best they ever ran. So now I used to have a notebook. They'd have me run around and write all the numbers down. Okay, Kevin, that's your job. I said, man, this is nuts. But we can now digitize that and we can come up with models and we can say, look, this is off today, and we can help train people to plug into that so they don't have to hit the same potholes that we hit.
Absolutely. And that sort of best in class behavior, best in class benchmarking across an industry or across a region, it really helps end users sort of identify the gaps and potential improvements. And zooming that into sort of benchmarking within, benchmarking the operational teams, the shift teams, the operators, the decisions they make, the procedures they follow. So they go hand in hand. And when you zoom down into, okay, what are these operators doing? How can that be improved? How can we capture that? A lot of times, when we have these, we begin these processes, with a customer or with a team. There's usually, like Kevin said, a set idea on, we've got this figured, or that's the best operator, or that's the best procedure. But having people around the table looking at the same thing so that they understand the context. This is how we ran that unit. This is how we thought this was good. But now we have data to show us that it's not as great as we thought. And we all agree because we all agreed on what is good and what is bad. That's bringing people together with technology. Yep. And that facilitates the step forward.
Yep.
And so,
Very good. Excellent thoughts. Any more thoughts around the people issue? There was one question that came from the attendees that was talking about there's always been the concern about the not only the aging workforce, but also this autonomous systems that are coming. Do people feel threatened that their jobs are going to be replaced or removed? Any thoughts on that?
We haven't seen a lot of that. I read a couple of those questions, and I do think it's a both and. The technologies help us and benefit us by making sure we're prepared for the turnover of our workforce as people retire and take their best knowledge with them. And with also the understanding that the newer workforce may not be as prepared with that depth of process knowledge or operating knowledge coming to the table. So we get a benefit from the technology on both ends. And the other thing that we see is newer operators they are more tech savvy to begin with. And so they more readily embrace new technologies, they're more comfortable with them, and they more readily see their role as interacting with the technologies as opposed to walking to the table with the depth of process knowledge. So it's a both and for us.
Yeah, I remember back early in my career when I brought some digital technology to an oil refinery for the first time, and I was expecting that the younger operators and employees would adopt it quickly, but it turned out some of the older operators saw the benefits of it right away, and I think the key to what we did that was successful was we included them in the decisions we made early on, so they were part of the process. I think that's a key thing right there. Is I think you were talking about this before, that having the people that are affected and can influence what your decisions are, as opposed to just rolling in technology and dumping it in their lap.
Yeah, and certainly within Coke, the understanding that sharing the best knowledge and bringing the best knowledge to the table, it's endemic to the Coke culture. It doesn't mean that everyone doesn't get to come to the table. Everyone gets to come to the table. Everyone recognizes the best knowledge, and there's no issues there. So we've been very fortunate to have that culture and been able to capture that as just a normal course of business.
Okay, I think I saw another interesting question regarding let's see. Oh, regarding the need for more measurement sensors to make sure that that this is to feed the autonomous systems with the raw information about what's going on in the facility. Any thoughts or comments on that?
There's an explosion of this type of data, and Coke has been very, very careful to, I think Kevin said this, you put so much information in front of a board operator and they don't know how to make a decision anymore. They'll tune everything out and they'll focus on what they focused on for 20 years to make their decisions. So we've had to be very, very careful with how we bring information into the control room, and we've segregated certain types of information into different screens to make sure board operators know, this is predictive or analytical, and this is being managed at this level, and here's what you manage. We've brought some information into the DCS, as I mentioned in my talk, but it's an explosion and it's very challenging. We have to be very careful with the application of the technologies to achieve the goal and not undermine the goals we're trying to get to with the board operators.
If I want to say something here, obviously every plant will get more instruments because they're getting cheaper and so on, but more data sometimes might not help you that much. Where more data or more instruments will help is in the predictive analytics for failures. That's what really, that's the technology that can use a little bit more data. In the process control area or in the automation, autonomy, and so on, the data we can use that we don't use right now are the cameras, this kind of non-traditional type of data. That's really what is going to help the autonomous operations or the optimization of the operation and so on. Yesterday, Exxon presented a way how to do automatic control for flares, for example, or the vision about flares. That control is based on cameras. We don't, usually the industry doesn't use cameras for process control at this point. It's only for monitoring.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's, I'm a technology company, so we're making tons of sensors. They're getting smaller and smaller, self-powered. It's incredible, but then you got to have consumers, and then you have to have use cases. And just recently, drives, pumps, motors, switch gears, and in industrial settings, there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of them. And we've been at a facility this year where you could literally see the wear marks on the pumps where guys would touch them over the year. You'd see where they, and so, you talk about the frequency, how long did it take for that person to do the physical rounds? Well, he touched them all. And, I was with Ireland, and the guy had just done his rounds. He had checked off on his book, everything's fine. The operator said, hey, machine's down. He looks at his chart and he's like, I can't go any faster. I mean, now I have to run around everywhere. I'm like, you can pull those together. We can put a digital network in place. We can put some wireless sensors. And he's like, you're kidding me. And he said, this would change my life. Guys, that's where we're at and I saw a lot, there's been tons of great questions come up here is where do we start? I'm like, that's where you start where the pain points are. And maybe you bring in somebody to help you identify in a workshop, and then you just start where you're at. Get some success. I like what Howard said is follow his plan. And that's what you'll get is, start where you're hurting and build, but figure out how to get people out of harm's way. If you still got people writing things on clipboards, running around the machine, digital transformation is huge, and it can help and it can reduce downtime. One of the best compliment I got from a mill manager was like, this digital stuff's like having a person on every asset. He said, we know before there's a failure. This is great. I don't have to worry about it. I can know I'm safe, reliable, and optimized. When I go to bed at night, things are cool. I mean, that's powerful, folks. And that's what's exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that using this new information, the sensors and whatever, in a machine learning could certainly be
oh,
useful.
No kidding. I mean, that's what it's all about. Is you get, but
it's all about.
You gotta be. One of the things that someone brought up is, what about my job? And I'm like, every time automation is brought in, there's an element of service that people kind of forget. Oh, well, I can put this in and get rid of these people. Well, guess what? You now have a back office to make sure that layer you put in. So the demographic changes, but the number of people don't necessarily change. You just get people out of harm's way.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. It's just, I would caution people to say, oh, I bought this new artificial intelligence, I plugged it in. APC is great, but when the PhD leaves, how long does it stay? What's your sustainability? What's the model matrix? What happens with, there's a regulatory sustainability component to all this stuff that will slowly degrade if you don't keep on it. And that means somebody doing something to inject energy to get continuous improvement.
I agree with that. I think the shift, hopefully, is, instead of bringing more information into the control room, you're kind of bringing more intelligence.
Right information. Yes, the right information. Yeah.
Something that's really well derived. And I had a question on that yesterday at a session yesterday on the ARC forum. And I think one of the things is for sustainability of these systems that Kevin described, an APC model, a high fidelity dynamic simulation model, and so on. These are challenging things to continue getting value from because there is a drift, and this helps to look at what causes that drift a lot of times. And a lot of times it's, there are changes on the plant, changes in the plant, expansions, new devices like we're talking about now. and the application we're talking about, APC or high fidelity simulation, is generally managed by these experts. And these experts are not experts of all the other things that may have changed, that's bring the digital twin out of whack with reality. So yeah, when you actually have more people from more disciplines in context leveraging the digital twin, you actually have a better chance of keeping it sustained and maintained. Because now, there's basically more eyes, more hands on it, more use case scenarios. So if there's a drift, there's more expertise to fix that drift or to address and know about that drift. So as these technologies, these digital twin technologies expand in the core digital layer or foundation of facilities, hopefully these things become easier as more people use them.
I think that's great. Here's a question from one of the audience members. It says, what are the best practices in helping projects and assets to decide what level of autonomy they want to achieve? Any thoughts on that? What are the best practices in deciding what projects are best to try to achieve autonomy?
When I got a chance to work in a lot of industries over my career, and when I was in the oil and gas sector, they had a thing called the Swiss cheese model, and there was different barriers of analysis or barrier states. So that's like, do I have? And the question was, am I safe, reliable, and optimized? Which is, do you know your threats? We don't want an explosion. We don't want people hurt. Do you know your threats? And are you safe, reliable, optimized? And then this was the UK Health and Safety Commissioner sent this out, and he goes, can you prove it? It's demonstrated proficiency. So it wasn't just a flashy dashboard. And as if you walk in, you saw a grease marker on how many days since an accident, you're going to get sold off. So that's where I got involved with a lot of these. And that was how we started. That very question is, we don't know where to start, and there's a lot of twitching going on. There's so much information, and people are like, I don't even have PID loops in automatic, and you're wanting to go to autonomous. The step is so massive. How do we get there? And what's the journey? And I've got a chance to travel all over the place. And I found the easy question is, am I safe, reliable, optimized? You have your assets, your functions, your process, and then you have a committee of your members say, what has got you scared? If you can't answer with a demonstrated, yes, I am safe, reliable, optimized, start there. And then take it to the next step.
Kevin, the question is about new projects.
Well, how do you know what's in it? That was the question. I guess I would say is, what I've heard is they want to start a project. Which project do you start with? Do you start with an IT or an OT, or where do you start? And I always bring it clear back to, let's talk and figure out where your pain points are and start there. That's how I would answer that. Then
I would say maybe it's not a project, maybe it's a program, an operational or a process program. And we've done both in Cokagon Energy. I agree too, you have to start with the fundamentals. You have to start with, where is your PID control loop performance at? Where's your basic control performance at? These kinds of things. It's a layered process.
But I repeat again, if you start a new project from scratch, what is the level of automation or autonomous based on these 5 levels? What is the base business right now? I'm asking the ABB and Yokogawa, what is the base business? Is it level 3, 4, or 2? What are you going to propose to the customers? I thought that was the question.
Okay, I can, from an ABB perspective, we get that. I'm trying to remember the levels here. Level 5 is full autonomy.
Yeah, you will never get that.
So there's level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Right.
Yeah.
We work in the ocean floor 5 miles deep, and you can't send people down there. So we actually do have autonomous solutions, but you kind of have to align that with the culture and the customer. And I like to show a plan. Is we start where you're at, is let's plug in and let's get that working, and then we go to the next step. But that's what I'm finding with this journey is people don't want to be painted into a corner. I mean, I was around when DCSs came out. I was like, what if I go with this one? Then that means I can't go with that one. And, and that's kind of what's going on right now is I try to calm folks down is like, you can't rip and replace everything. Start where you're at. And that's where the assessment we were talking about is maybe I've got I took a screenshot. So I knew what, operational assistant, regulatory automation, advanced regulatory, select autonomy and full autonomy. My background is PID automation and fixing those. And so I'm like, most of the people don't have level 1 right. So let's fix that. And then let's get you some money and use that money to go to level 2. And let's get that right. And then show a step approach. We have customers in all different levels. I don't like calling it digital maturity. I wish there was a better digital readiness maybe, or there's a lot of language. You kind of are limited in some cases on what we can do in the autonomous. If they just say we can't, we're still doing air gap for cybersecurity, then you're going to have a hard time selling it an autonomous solution. Let's make what you have right and then get to the next step. I don't know if that's the answer you want, but that's how we show the connectivity in the process and how to get there.
We just put a greenfield chemical plant. It's being commissioned right now, and I would say it arrived to us. It's been delivered at maybe level 2, maybe 2.5. And that's been my experience in the greenfield or major brownfield expansions is the projects get delivered at about level 2, maybe level 2 plus. But all of the level 3 stuff and level 4 stuff comes after commissioning and startup. That's my experience.
Yeah, that's what I asked for. Okay, so that's.
If I comment on that, I think it matters there's a number of things I think overall to consider. And of course, whether it's a brand new greenfield or a brownfield is important. Like Kevin said, we have tools to help support, customers in making those decisions. And it is sort of, a foundational effect. You have to address your core foundation infrastructures. I think myself and Howard have had this conversation a couple of times, ensuring your core foundation infrastructures, you're not going to get digital or autonomous if your ground level is bad or if your ground level has gaps. So that's straight off the bat. The second thing is it's going to depend on the industry, of course, because Kevin mentioned, subsea, where, you're going to need as much autonomous as you can. But in other industries as well, we have full-on autonomous in some industries like cement and so on. Where the process is simple and it's really more a case of what could go wrong. Some industries are further ahead than others because of the nature of what it is they do.
Yeah, complexity, yeah.
In the renewable energy industry, for example, utilizing things like drones, artificial intelligence to read cracks on windmill blades and so on is a very, very key part of that sort of asset management. And that's coming more and more into into the rest of the industries, including oil and gas. I mean, there is a broad range of technologies that are out and also on the cusp to take advantage of this. So if you're sort of planning what level of autonomy should we get to, I think the first thing to note is when we look at that, autonomy level or digital maturity or autonomous maturity levels that we have within our company and also ARC and so on, is to understand that the top categories are at this point fairly aspirational. There's not a lot of industries that are on level 4 or level 5 in autonomy. And, and so that's aspirational. That's where it's going to go. In the meantime, you really want to target for as much of it as you can. And that's where the tools that I talked about and Kevin talked about and some of the stuff that I showed in earlier sessions at this ARC this year, where you can sort of see the relationship between core foundational technologies like sensor infrastructure, analytical infrastructure, and how that ties into people's behavior and how that ties into other systems. So before you make those, far-reaching information or autonomous-based decisions, you can sort of see how all of those things have to be lined up in place. And those tools are really powerful in helping customers who are planning a new plant or planning a digital transformation in looking at a big picture, comprehensive plan forward, and then getting stakeholders within that organization to have their input at that level. And that way they can sort of, everybody's on board with the path that has been set. And so that's my answer to that. That's the way we do it, and I think it is probably the best way to get as much inclusion and knowledge into this process as possible.
I would just throw out there, there's sort of the system and automation and ERP and MOM and those, but then there's the service side. And I would say we're back to the COVID question is that was transformational on the service side, where we were used to dispatching a human to a site, and all of a sudden you can't bring in a human. And so you have a customer with a problem, and we can't literally, so we have the expertise, we just can't get them there, or they won't allow them. Or if they go there, they come back and they're off for 2 weeks. So it forced the maybe level 4, and I put those in there so somebody could see, I guess somebody else did too, is I don't know if autonomy is the right word, that implies no human. I think autonomy was, we were able to solve the solutions to get our customers back up and running by adopting digital transformation methodologies to reach out and touch our customers through this little thing called the internet. And it was literally transformational. Some of the things I only had dreamed of, we're doing. And so that has been where I would see the COVID thing has driven us, and our customers are now asking is, can you have a service offering that doesn't require a person running around touching everything? And that's maybe where you start on a service space, and that's a big deal, and we have it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I know that one of the main considerations is people safety and safety of the plant and whatever. So that's a driving motivation as well. And I think it might have been Eugene talking about other industries, and I know that certain aspects of mining, the reason why they're driving towards autonomous operations is because it's just not safe to have human beings at the bottom of a mine, for example. But anyway, you've got to pick the right case to move in that direction. It's got to be a business proposition. It's got to be a safety issue. And of course, the human factor is very important.
I think I think the definition of autonomous, I think in a lot of cases, in some cases, it's not having a human in the workflow process or in a decision process and so on. And that's accurate for many situations, but I think a broader definition is, where you have the maximum human sustainability. So that involves, what risk you're putting people on, what level of performance people are able to operate at. And that level of combination should be the target. I mean, it's not a blank, well, we just need to get people out of here. I don't think that's necessarily the philosophy. The philosophy is, how do we have maximum human sustainability? And if that involves removing people from processes where they could be hurt, then absolutely, let's have that maximum human sustainability. But then there's another factor of the performance as well. So how can we ensure that this sort of this autonomous operation, where people are involved, is orchestrated is orchestrated tightly with artificial intelligence or unmanned operations and so on.
Autonomy, it doesn't mean no human involvement. Autonomy means a different role for the human. Even for the self-driving cars, I don't believe in the next 10 years you will be able to drive without you watching or something. Let's make clear. So autonomy means that the role of the operator or the engineer is different. It's more like a supervisory role. It's more like a high-level thinking role, because I don't think we'll be able to program every event, any unplanned event. I don't know what I don't know. And the autonomous operations are programmed by people. Unless you know the event, it's very difficult to take that. So we need to make sure we understand that really people are involved in the autonomous operations, just their role is different.
I agree.
Okay. I don't know if we have any more questions from the audience. I probably missed one or two. Let me just take a quick check here. Anyway, I think we're about 5 minutes from time to close our session. Is there any last comments that you folks would like to make? One of the things I was, I'm sure I know the answer already, but how important is it to have a relationship between the service provider and the end user? How important is this journey?
I mean, for me, it's crucial. You know, our relationship as a trusted advisor is we're here to help our clients reach levels of production quality and cost to produce that they've not seen. And when that happens, amazing things happen. And it goes back to what Apostolos was saying about contextualizing the data. Is I've had too many examples where if you don't sort of know a little bit about the plant and their culture and that relationship, the data can kind of be misleading, or you can't pull out definites out of it. So the more you build that relationship, you know, that's when we start in our digital journey. I used to be the guy that would go to the site and sit there in the basement of a paper mill. Then they figured out how to put a digital station out in the parking lot. And then they're like, well, you know, hey, we got this, you could just do it from home. And I was doing my work and a guy sent me email, says, where are you at? I've been looking all over you for you. When are we going to go to lunch? And I said, well, this was my remote week. And that's when I realized you actually can do digital just like you're there. But you also have to realize there's a human element. You know, you visiting, talking, picking up the phone, visiting when you're if you can. I'm big on the relationship. Is if you don't have that, you kind of drift off and you lose relevance.
Yeah.
100% agree. Absolutely. The relationship is all important because I'm not even sure how you can properly identify and measure the value without the relationship. I think so. That's really hugely important. And, you know, at the end of the day, nobody really wants to watch robots play football or basketball. So it's going to be people all the way through, you know, and so there are, you know, and utilizing these technologies to reach certain objectives, you know, to reach certain objectives of human sustainability and production performance and benefit to society, you know, is, you know, I think that's where today most industries have their eyes on and what that end game goal is. And without relationship, I don't see how you can possibly get there.
I agree.
Very good. Okay, I don't have any more questions that I can think of. I think you all have done a wonderful job in terms of trying to put some sense and direction to this whole discussion. I think we're all in vehement agreement that this is a good direction, that it's going to be good for business, good for people, and something we have to do. And luckily, you know, with this COVID-19 pandemic, luckily a lot of the things that we've been doing have helped us in this very trying time. But with this, I would like to say thank you to all you folks. You've done a great job presenting this information. I really appreciate being a small part of this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. We'll get some good sessions tomorrow. And again, thank you so much for participating in my session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
What a pleasure.
Thanks,
All the best.
Thank you.
See ya.